If you've ever dealt with a narcissist, you know there's something almost predictable about them, like they're all reading from the same script. And here's the wild part, they are. Today, we're going to break down the 7 stages every narcissist goes through in their lifetime, from how they're made to how it all falls apart. And trust me, once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Hi, my name is Michele Paradise, and welcome to my channel, where I blend evidence-based information with my own lived experiences to help you navigate the most important relationship in your life, which is the one with yourself. If you're a subscriber and you haven't hit the notification button yet, please do so you don't miss any of my future videos. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit subscribe and notifications. So let's get into it. Stage 1, birth of the false self. So first, let's be clear, narcissists aren't born this way. They're made, and I stand by that. I do not believe it's genetic. It can look genetic because it's modeled behavior, but there is no gene for narcissism. Stage 1 happens in childhood. Picture this, a sensitive kid, often really smart, really aware, but somewhere along the way, they learn that their real self isn't getting them love. Maybe their parents only paid attention when they performed in sport, in academics, in the creative arts. Maybe they were ignored unless they were perfect. So they make a decision. Remember, this is a child making a decision. So it's not based on, a lot of maturity. And their decision is it's not conscious, by the way, but deep down, they decide that if the real me doesn't work, I'll create a version that does. And it's very clever. And that's when the mask gets built. The real self, the vulnerable, messy human part, gets shoved into a box and locked away. They didn't choose to become a narcissist. They chose to survive. And I do have compassion for that. But here's the problem. That mask, it never comes off. That mask was a survival tool until it became their identity. Stage 2 is the mirror hunt. Stage 2 kicks in during adolescence. This is when the mask gets polished and perfected. They start figuring out who they need to be to get admiration. Maybe they're the bad boy, the golden child, the misunderstood genius, the effortlessly hot enigma. Whatever gets attention, they do it. They go with it. And they start collecting what I call mirrors, people who reflect back the image they've created. So if somebody reflects back that they're a genius, they'll go with that person because that's what they need. Friends who worship them, crushes who chase them. We've all been there. I'm sure you've had a crush on somebody in your childhood or your teenage years, and you know how painful that can be when they don't even see you, but they collect you. Even enemies who obsess over them are mirrors to them. Every compliment is like currency to them. Every criticism, no, that's a personal attack. Because if the mask gets questioned, the whole thing collapses. And here's where you start seeing the anger. Because underneath all that confidence is deep insecurity, and they can't let you see it. So insecurity gets flipped into anger instantly. It's their defense mechanism. You ever notice how fast they go from charming to scary? From 0 to 100 in a split second? That's the glitch. That's the real self trying to break through. Stage 3 is the ascent. This is their golden era. Usually hits in their 20s to mid-30s. This is when they're climbing every ladder. Career, crushing it, or at least pretending to. Dating, they're collecting people like trophies. Social life, they're the center of every room. They've mastered manipulation by now. They know exactly how to seduce you, confuse you, keep you hooked. They weaponize ambiguity. You never quite know where you stand with them. And that's intentional. They'll date someone who's too much and then gaslight them into thinking they're not enough. This was absolutely my experience growing up with my father. I always felt too much, and that carried on throughout my life, and I never felt enough. They surround themselves with admirers, enablers, and a few rivals just to keep themselves sharp and on their toes. From the outside, their life looks perfect, beautiful, successful, enviable. But on the inside, completely hollow. Because here's the thing, they mistake control for confidence. And remember, they're the most insecure person in the room. They also mistake praise for love, and they have no idea what real connection even feels like. Beautiful on the outside, hollow on the inside. That's what they are. Stage 4, the unraveling. This is where things start to crack. Eventually, people stop sticking around. They're probably in their 30s into their 50s. The pattern repeats too many times, jobs fall apart, relationships explode, friends disappear, and they start getting feedback that they can't spin anymore. Things like, "You're exhausting to be around," or "You twist everything I say," or "You actually hurt me." Now, a normal person, a typical person would say, they'd hear that and think, okay, maybe I need to look at myself. But narcissists, no, they take it personally, not internally. Because if the mask is questioned, their entire identity collapses. So what do? They double down. Yeah, this is a really painful one. They blame everyone else. They reinvent themselves completely, pivot to a whole new identity. Suddenly they're a spiritual guru, a life coach, an empath. Yes, really. And I'm not making fun of any of those. I'm not saying all life coaches or spiritual gurus are narcissistic, but this is a space that a lot of narcissists will step into to redress the balance, to get people to look away from what they really are. Whatever sells, they'll do, but the cracks keep spreading. No matter how fast they run, they can't escape their own reflection. Stage 5 is the collapse, and it's brutal. At some point, the mask just can't keep up anymore. It slips publicly, painfully, or both. Maybe it's a messy divorce where everyone takes the other person's side. Maybe it's a scandal at work. Maybe it's just that everyone in their life is exhausted and starts pulling away at the same time. This is their existential crisis. Absolutely. It's a moment of crisis. And here's where it gets interesting. They might actually acknowledge it. They might say things like, I know I have issues. They might go to therapy once. That was my experience with my narcissist. They might post on Instagram about growth and setting boundaries. But here's the problem. Real healing requires vulnerability. It means facing that scared kid they buried decades ago. It means taking off the mask and dealing with what's underneath. And that's not in the game plan because vulnerability feels like death to them. So they perform healing instead of actually doing it. So the healing is very performative. Stage 6 is the rebrand. Older narcissists often shift into roles where they can still get supply, but in different ways. They become the bitter know-it-all at work who needs everyone to ask for their wisdom. The overbearing parent trying to live through their kids. The cryptic elder who speaks in vague platitudes, but punishes you with passive aggression when you don't call enough. They demand loyalty. They act like aging is a personal insult, like the world owes them respect just for existing. And here's the kicker. They still expect applause, still need to be the center of attention. The methods change, but the hunger never does. Stage 7 is the hollowing, and then comes the end game, the hollowing. It's a harrowing word, isn't it? This is what happens when the supply finally dries up, when their looks fade, they run out of money, they run out of social status, when the charisma doesn't work anymore, when the applause stops. What's left is often a very lonely, very bitter person sitting in a room wondering why no one visits, why their kids don't call, why nobody cares. And look, the sadness is real. It is. And I do have compassion for their buried self. I'm not saying it's not, but it's sadness born from a lifetime of avoidance, not evolution. They could have grown. They could have healed. They had 1,000 chances to take the mask off and be real, but they chose performance over presence every single time. And now the mirror is cracked and it's beyond repair. So here's the truth. Narcissists aren't monsters. They're humans who built entire identities around avoiding pain. But when the mask becomes the self, the damage ripples outwards to partners, to kids, to everyone who gets close. Understanding these stages doesn't excuse them, but it does explain why they're all so eerily similar. It's not a personality flaw, it's a lifetime defense mechanism and a personality adaptation. A costume so convincing, even they believe it. And if you've loved one, survived one, or almost become one yourself, take this as a sign. Be aware. Stay awake. Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and the notification button if you wish. And please drop me a comment below. I want to hear your experiences if you're willing to share. All that remains for me to say is stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.